Wow.
Reboot the universe.
Hilarious. Folks, welcome to Werewolf Radar, the world's premier Andy Daly preparedness podcast. My name is Jordan Dahl.
I am Nate Balding, and I am Bonanzas for bananas.
And I'm Roger Norquist.
And Roger, we have some guests today, right?
We do. From the Least Haunted podcast, we have Cody and Garth. Say hello
Cody.
to the Pingo Nation.
Hello, Pingo Nation.
Hello, Pingo Nation. This is Garth.
Howdy,
That's
fellas. Do you think
That is
that that hyper specific Andy Daly content up top is going to resonate
Will
with the
get cut?
people?
It will, to make this talk even more weird, Andrew Daly specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you keep referencing it now, you'll have to
Mhm.
include it, or else
Mhm.
no one will know. So
Right.
we're
Well,
Right.
that's
committed
what
at
you
this point.
think.
Isn't that how that works?
I think that's how that works.
And if you
Is
want,
it-
if you want to
We
find
live
more
outside
of
of
our
context.
guests, if you want to find more of our guests who we're joking with right now, that's Least Haunted Podcast on Twitter, Least Haunted, and website leasthaunted.com. Just before I totally forget to say
Yeah,
where you're all
yeah.
can be
Oh,
found.
thank you. Yes, yes.
And
We try
we'll-
to make it easy.
We'll let you. We'll ask you guys for plugs at the end. So think of something real juicy.
Ooh, okay.
Okay.
It'll depend on how this episode goes, I guess.
Sure,
which one we
sure.
should recommend. Yeah.
After
Yeah.
we throw down.
Yeah.
That's what is happening. We've been working it out on Twitter, and we were like, you guys are fun skeptics. We're fun believers.
Mhm.
Let's throw cases at each other, see what sticks at the wall on our own walls of belief.
Mhm. So this
And-
is a belief throwdown.
And
A
we are
belief
doing
death match.
and we are doing the curious case of Travis Walton.
That is. That makes it sound like
That
a
is-
charming Wes Anderson.
He's got like a Benjamin Button situation.
Yeah. Oh,
I
my
could-
name's.
I
my
could
name's
run with that.
Travis.
He's being abducted backwards through time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
aliens brought him to us.
Mhm.
Played by
And
Ben Stiller.
you guys, I believe, are sharing the unfortunate events of the Winchester House.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm going to go on record and try to prove to you that the Winchester Mystery House is the least haunted house in America.
Okay. I
At
don't.
least that's, that's kind of a hyperbolic claim. but-
I'm ready to take that walk with you. Did you see the movie that was like Winchester?
No,
No.
Wait, Helen Mirren,
It-
Her Majesty.
Maybe.
Mirren?
Well, maybe. Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't see it
Uh,
either. But
No, I definitely did watch it, and I
really?
don't think it was Helen Mirren, unless there's another
boy.
Winchester movie.
I never even
Boy.
heard of a Winchester movie. I'm gonna look.
Oh yeah, they're. I think they've made a couple of them at least where like where it's like
They're like Blumhouse affairs to be like, it's
Yeah.
the Winchester
Yeah.
series.
exactly,
Wow.
exactly.
Take a step down that ladder.
Anyway,
It's all in the Winchester cinematic universe.
Anyway, today's episode of Werewolf Radar is brought to you by the Monstroko brand V-Cell battery for use with Monstroko Blood Charge and Blood Charge Plus enabled devices. You want to keep them in the fridge, and it does like honestly, if you have like one of those fridges that goes real low, because you can hear the blood sloshing around in there, and they start to stink if you leave them out. And they'll
They
swell.
also work really well with the Monstroko brand battery coffin, aka a fridge.
Yeah, yeah. You can get the whole thing. $700.
Oh, that's a
Don't
steal.
put anything else
That's
in
a
the fridge.
really good deal, honestly.
Don't. The fridge is not for anything else.
Oh, can I use other batteries or only Monstroko brand batteries will
If
go in the
you're-
coffin?
If you just only Monstroko brand blood charge batteries go in the coffin, anything else in there, you're risking a hybrid vampiric battery situation.
Mm.
The Daywalker battery, perhaps.
Unbelievable. It's good. It drains the life from devices you put it into, and then it starts getting up at night, draining the life from people and pets around the house. You don't want that. Don't put anything but Monstroko V-Cell batteries in the V-Cell coffin.
Nice.
Fridge coffin. Coffin fridge. We'll have some. It'll have a cool name.
By
It'll
Monday, it will have a cool name. By Monday, at publication of this episode, it's going to have a cool name.
All right.
Recoffinator?
Okay. All right.
We're getting there.
That's halfway.
That's halfway there. All right. Okay. Let's the lines have been drawn. Who would like to present first?
I feel we should home court
Okay.
advantage and
Yep.
whatnot.
Okay.
This is your bunker. Go ahead.
All right.
Thank you.
So why don't we talk about what happened in the curious case of Travis Walton?
Alliteration's fun.
It is fun. It is fun. Roger, did you have that UFOspec.com article?
The UFO.spec article. I had the Saucero article.
Saucero. That's what I'm looking for. Saucero. Monstroco's only competitor.
But I do have the article I sent you all.
Okay, why don't you
earlier.
lead us through that and tell us what happened to Travis Walton?
This
right.
is from saucerco.com. And it is titled "What Happened to Travis Walton" by
a Monstroco
Saucer.
subsidiary.
Mm-hmm.
So this is written by the one and the only Saucer.
Mm-hmm.
The incident, Wednesday, November 5th, 1975, was set to be just another regular workday for 22-year-old Travis Walton. Little did he know that he would have the experience of a lifetime that evening.
Can we just talk about
the copy on some of these articles are so phenomenal.
Oh, Saucer is impeccable. I'll hear not a word against them. Can we talk real quick about this incredible art, the What Happened to Travis Walton art that our listeners can't see? That looks like it's from. It looks like it's from a Travis Walton action figure.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
And
If
this
you go
one
to
down in the
YouTube,
corner,
you can see it.
this one in
subscribe
the
to the
corner
YouTube.
where it looks like he's just at the coolest dance party and the laser's hitting him right in the heart, man. And he's
The
gonna
beat
live
just
forever.
The beat just dropped and the acid kicked in. This dude's going to space.
It's about to
Yeah, look at that font. So that's very psychedelic.
Hello, Snowflake, Arizona.
So after a long day of work at the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, Travis and his logging crew of 6 were riding home when they suddenly noticed a brilliant glow peeking from through the trees. As they continued riding down the dirt road, they eventually got close enough to realize the light was emanating from a structured craft. Before the truck came to a complete stop and mesmerized by what he saw, Travis leaped out to approach the unidentified object as it hovered silently in a clearing.
So, just to touch on that real quick, a lot of people, when they're kind of attempting to disprove this case, will talk about how Travis is and was like a UFO buff at the time.
Mhm.
Him and his mom and his brothers were like into it.
Yes.
And like and they like a couple of weeks earlier, like some televised version of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction had happened, and people will be like, they were all jazzed up on TV, and they think that's they cooked it up. I think that this point
they weren't just ragged from their 12-hour day logging.
well, but I think that this point, like, I could see that type of interest influencing this move that he makes right here. Because one time we were in Wyoming. I love reptiles. This was in my reptile summer.
Oh, everybody has a reptile phase.
Those reptile summers. And we saw a badger with a rattlesnake, enormous rattlesnake, biggest thing I've ever seen in the wild. Probably biggest snake I've ever seen in America. And we come up over the rise, and there it is, like dragging this thing across the road. We stopped the truck, and I jumped out. Like, I know that instinct when you're interested in something to be like, let's get up there. What do we do? Take a picture, take something. And then you're like, oh, I'm a little close to this. Literally 7 feet. This thing was enormous, guys.
Wow.
I'm not kidding.
And similar
Move in on these two predators. Why
Similar
not?
thing happens to Travis Walton there. He gets very excited, runs out to this thing he cares and has theories about. And within moments of his approach, Walton was struck by a vibrant bluish green beam of light that seemingly came from the bottom of the craft and sent him flying backwards several feet. The immense beam lit up the entire forest brighter than daylight, and witnesses have compared the beam to a bolt of lightning and a long blue flame.
So
Travis never sees the beam.
So I think he did get a little close to whatever this thing was, and I think he got popped by the generator. I think that's literally what happened. Is they accidentally electrocuted this guy.
I'm reserving most of my comments till after when I get my rebuttal time. So
Yeah.
if you're wondering why I'm not chiming in.
Please feel free. We got there will be no rebuttal time.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you wanted to like you guys make your case and then I jump in
No,
with
we're
my
just gonna
case.
go loosey goosey. What do you
Oh,
think?
okay. All right.
It's
So-
all butts anytime.
Okay. So you mentioned the TV show that was on about Betty and Barney Hill
Mhm,
that aired 2 weeks before this happened.
mhm.
Remember though, at this time there's like maybe 5 or 6 TV channels. That's it. So a lot of people saw this special. I just bring this up so to say that the idea of saying that a UFO abducted somebody at this time, it's already at maximum awareness in the public.
It's in the zeitgeist.
It's in the zeitgeist right now.
Mhm.
So people probably more inclined to believe this story because, hey, well, they just had on ABC, one of the only like 4 network television stations in existence, had a 2-hour movie about this.
Sure.
And that's ABC. They're reputable. They're a news source. So,
Mhm.
people are already primed
Oh yeah.
to read the story.
Mhm.
You mentioned
Right
about
around this time, the show, what is it? The Unexplained airs stories such as these.
Right.
and is this when, what was that show that Leonard Nimoy used to host? In Search Of. Was that?
Oh,
what this
yeah.
thing was?
Yes,
Search of.
I think In Search Of is like a year or 2 later, but
Yeah, actually,
it's
Travis-
definitely something.
Travis
Listen, Leonard
Walton-
Nimoy comes into this story soon enough.
He does. He
Okay.
does. He does.
And then Jordan, your comment about the generator. I know that later Travis Walton, one of the many times the story changes because he's been telling the story for nigh on 50 years. And so details emerge and some are retracted and the story does not stay consistent, even amongst all the witnesses. This story changes over time. And so at this point, I think the most recent one is he says that they didn't intend to hurt him, or it was an accident akin to hitting a deer with your car and then trying to take that deer to the vet and nurse it back.
Well,
to
there you
health.
go.
So
That's exactly what I think
I mean,
happened.
I
Good
think
point,
that,
Cody.
That lends credulity.
Don't.
does it? It doesn't.
You're
though.
helping their case, man.
So
don't worry.
So back to the narrative.
So you heard Cody. This thing, it was an accident. And also, yeah, he was excited about, the whole country was excited about UFOs, which is why I think he leapt out of the car. I don't know if it's why he, built a scaffolding in the woods with a light on it.
He didn't build it. It was already there.
What was it?
Someone built it and he came.
I'm getting too far ahead of myself. We got to carry on the narrative first.
Okay,
before I
yes.
can,
In a panic.
for the prestige. We
In
need
a
to
panic,
see the trick.
and for the people who don't know this tale, in a panic, the crew boss and driver of the truck, Mike Rogers, fled the scene as quickly as possible. The crew was utterly baffled as to what they had witnessed, had no earthly explanation. Minutes later, the crew decided to return to the site to help Travis if they could. Much to everyone's surprise, Travis was gone. The crew looked for several minutes but could not find him anywhere. I mean, surely you could have looked for an hour.
Well, I mean,
Several
they just
minutes.
saw their buddy get popped by a fucking
It's dark. They probably
what
don't have
they believe to
flashlights.
be.
It's
I
also
mean-
here's a place where my skepticism kind of rolls through.
Nate,
worth
stop
noting that-
joining their side.
I
Nate, you're
look,
defecting already.
I know. I defected from the start.
They didn't even offer you anything yet. At least get something.
Negotiate, Nate.
The oldest guy on the crew is 20. When you say crew and you think about
Yeah.
lumberjacks, you generally picture like
30 to 40
a bunch of-
year olds
yeah.
living
The
life.
oldest guy on the crew is 29.
Sure.
Travis Walton's 22. They're
The youngest
everything
one.
about this could have been they pranked this guy.
The youngest person
Oh.
on the crew is 17 years old.
Dang,
Yeah.
get him.
And so, and yeah, the theory that I'm going to put forward is that, yeah, this is a prank being perpetrated by Mike Rogers, who is the crew leader, who happens to be Travis Walton's brother-in-law, and Travis.
Well, you know, in
and one other
Snowflake, who's
accomplice.
not?
Well, actually, 3 of the members of the crew are not from Snowflake at all. They're actually from Phoenix and grew up in Phoenix. So they are unfamiliar with this area.
Mm-hmm.
The youngest member had only been on the crew for 3 days when this happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they're not all experienced in this area or experienced loggers per se at this point when this happens.
Fair. So
Sure.
they look for a couple minutes. I feel that's not enough time. It leads to the prank theory for sure. Because if they were close friends, I mean, Jordan, Nate, I would search for you for at least 30 minutes.
Yeah, I would think
mean,
that
The text would say a half hour,
it's
Roger.
dark.
I would think that after a day or two, I would be like, this was a prank and now he's not back. If it was either of you guys or even anyone that I work with. And maybe when the cops get involved, I'd be like,
Which
okay,
It
this
happens.
is
Yeah,
not
which is
worth-
happening right
this is
now.
not worth
Yeah.
scaring this 17-year-old, but they didn't. They've never changed their story.
The crew,
Well, I
crew
think the
di-
cops getting involved is what made them commit.
the crew
Oh.
It's
drives
not a
into
prank.
town.
It's
The
not
crew
just a
is
prank.
driving into town and contacting the local sheriff. They explain what they witnessed as best they could and told authorities that a flying saucer had taken their taken their friend, Travis
Taking this
Walton.
guy that they rode with.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
In effort to prove them wrong, the sheriff conducted a thorough search of the area along with Mike Rogers. They could not find him. In the days Walton was missing, all 6 of his coworkers were accused of murder. With no other explanation, Mike
Whoa.
Rogers and the rest of the crew stuck to their story. As far as they were concerned, they witnessed a UFO
And-
shoot a beam into Travis and knock him down to the ground before he suddenly vanished minutes later.
Well, and later on, Travis Walton will say that Alan Dallas tried to kill him by cutting a tree down to fall on him.
That was just a good prank. That's how you know you're one of the fellow
Now that's
loggers.
a prank.
So you said, you know, what would it be really worth it to them to carry out this prank on a 17-year-old? Well, it's not just the 17-year-old who's the subject of this prank. We'll call it a prank for right now. But actually, I will show you that there was a financial interest in this entire endeavor.
Sure.
And that is that as per the contract that this logging crew had with the U.S. Department of Forestry to thin out this area, when you go for a job of this nature, you bid a job. So you're not getting paid by hour. You say, I will complete this scope of work by this deadline for this pay.
Uh-huh.
They sign this contract. Per the contract, within 10 days of Travis's disappearance, if they have not completed the job, they forfeit 10% of the job pay, as well as get docked an additional $1 per acre that they have worked. They are far behind schedule at this point. There's no way they're going to meet this deadline. The only way that they could break the contract as per the written agreement is if there was an act of God or something that threatened their safety in the area was present. Within days of this happening, Mike Rogers files to cancel this contract on the grounds of it's too dangerous. A UFO will get me like it got my buddy.
He Scooby-Dooed him.
Also, this is in November. This is November,
The
right?
Scooby-Doo theory.
So this is
Scooby-Dooed
November.
their asses.
Winter is setting in, so they are not going to complete this job in time. It is going to be too late in the year to carry on the work. They will have to wait till the spring to finish this
what can we
job.
do about this?
So also when the contract breaks, they by default they get 10% of the pay.
Hmm.
So there's a financial interest in carrying this
Cut
out,
and run,
not just to cut and run on this, but also one of the polygraph tests that is performed that's
Mhm.
coming up is performed by the National Enquirer.
Mhm.
Actually, Travis fails this polygraph test, so then there's
Mhm.
another one that happens after that he
But they all
passes.
passed eventually.
But the questions that they are asked are very specific in these polygraph tests and are worded in such a way that they're not really about. Here's the questions they were asked are: question number 1, did you cause Travis Walton any serious physical injury last Wednesday afternoon? Well, no. So they pass. Question 2, do you know if Travis Walton was physically injured by some other member of your work crew last Wednesday? Well, no, not to our knowledge. Okay, you pass. Question 3. Do you know if Travis Walton's body is buried or hidden somewhere in the Turkey Springs area? Again, answer is no. That's true. Question 4. Did you tell the truth about actually seeing a UFO last Wednesday when Travis Walton disappeared? Well, for 3 of those guys, as far as they know, they saw a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, polygraph tests are inadmissible in court, as per a 1998 U.S. Supreme Court decision, where it was ruled that a polygraph test is no more reliable than flipping a coin.
Yeah.
So the polygraph tests are a moot point. That doesn't even matter.
Honestly, I don't put a lot of stock into.
But this was the 70s,
the polygraph
back when shit was
test. It
wild.
This was kind of a fad at the time as well. Yeah,
but that doesn't change the fact that it's unreliable. Just
later,
it was a fad at the time.
Later, they put them on like a
the moment of truth TV show.
TV show that was like a game show with polygraphs.
And in according to Travis Walton himself, he went on that show for a few reasons. One of was the day that he got the call from the producers, he claims he had received a notice that he was being laid off of his job of the past 11 years. The cash prize that he could win on this show was $100,000. The way the show was structured was they'd bring contestants in, hook them up to a polygraph, and ask them a series of questions, kind of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style. Every time you got a correct answer, you moved up the ladder to a higher cash prize. He gets to the $100,000 question, which is, were you really abducted by a UFO on November 5th or whatever the date was, 1975? And he says, yes. It says false. He is devastated. And then he himself tries to argue that polygraphs are not reliable sources of the truth.
Yeah.
His claim is that you need to take multiple polygraph tests, multiple. Then you take the majority of the answers, and that is the actual answer. But that's, again, the same as flipping a coin. Just because I flip a coin 30 times, and the majority of the times means that heads came up, that doesn't mean that heads is always going to come up more likely, or that's, so it's
inadmissible.
Inadmissible.
And Roger, go ahead.
And I think now we should talk about how we know where he went. So very little is known in terms of like accounts of what happened to Travis Walton after he was struck. Even Travis Walton's own memory failed him, and he could not remember where he was when he woke up supposedly 5 days later.
Because he got struck in the dome with exotic particles from an alien logging ship.
I know where he was.
So how we know?
Walton says that they killed him, and he thinks that they brought him back to life.
Yes, and that is from as the article from Saucer says, the rest of the incredible experience was revealed as a result of regression hypnosis conducted by James A. Harder in the 1970s. In the hypnosis room, Harder and Walton were three. That's not the correct sentence. In the hypnosis room with Harder and Walton were 3 physicians and a psychiatrist. When discussing the case, Harder said, "Beyond any reasonable doubt, the evidence is valid that could be accepted in America in an American criminal court." As we discussed, that's been changed over the decades and times. Travis said he blacked out the moment the beam hit him. He says he felt a numbing shock and then blacked out. The next thing he could remember was waking up while lying flat in an oddly shaped room. Travis says he opened his eyes and he suddenly noticed 3 humanoid creatures standing over him. Walton recalls a strange device placed over his chest, holding him down on the table. Startled by this, Travis got up and grabbed an object to defend himself from the odd creatures. He waved it around in an attempt to threaten them.
What do you
Travis
think he
describes
grabbed?
the creature as being...
He actually says that he grabbed something that resembled a glass beaker.
Ooh, space beaker.
It was in a lab. It's a laboratory, right?
The creatures were 4 to 5 feet tall with pale skin and enlarged heads. They had large brown eyes and were wearing orange jumpsuits. Travis's description of being similar to that of the others. Once the creatures left the room, Travis curiously walked around the craft. He found himself in a room resembling a planetarium. Then two more human-looking beings in blue jumpsuits approached Travis.
Planetarium or just an open window?
Yeah, right.
This is where they send in the two humans who are on the craft to be like,
human-looking beings.
You go talk to him. You're human sized.
Yeah.
You're human enough. He won't
I
be
don't
able
want
to
to
tell
talk
the
to him. You
difference.
talk to him.
I like to think that
he's got a beaker. You
these
know
are
how to
kind
deal
of-
with these guys.
these are kind of from
It's similar
previous.
to it's like how animal researchers will sometimes wear an animal suit to like put the animals at ease.
Interesting.
They
Sure.
they find something.
They do it with pandas hilariously so, and the pandas are all about it.
So we can't rule out that these are just two of those smaller aliens stacked on top of each other.
I think these are two saucer-born humans from previous abductions, and their names are like Jeff and Cleo, and I want to see a sitcom about them on CBS.
If I'm recalling Fire in the Sky correctly, there is a moment
Don't
where
trust that movie.
I no, it's not a good movie.
Disagree.
I mean, it's probably worth a watch. I haven't seen it.
It's a
since it
fun
came out.
watch. It's
Scared
fun to
the
watch
hell
movies
out
from
of
a
me.
different time.
Scared me when I was a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a moment where he takes the face off of one of the aliens.
Face off.
And he realizes that the gray head structure is actually just a space suit.
Well,
which I think is these two humanoids.
In the movie, he finds spacesuits like hanging up. There's like a coat rack, like an alien coat closet.
Now, again,
and he like turns it around.
We can't rely on the movie because it is based on, in the loosest sense of the terms, of his actual book that he wrote. And according to Paramount executives at the time they were optioning this, they're like, yeah, this is such a dull story. We need to spice it up. So most of the stuff that happens on the ship is invented purely for this movie.
Inadmissible. Inadmissible.
So the two blue jumpsuit human-looking beings approach him and transport Walton elsewhere. Walton believes he was transported out of the scout ship he was taken in, taken to another craft. He remembers these beings putting a mask-like device over his face that caused him to black out. And beyond that, he remembers very little. And now we're at the return of Travis Walton. He's riding a motorcycle with shotguns and a bandolier going like, I faced the aliens.
Walton's back and he's had enough.
On the morning of the 5th day, look to the rising sun. And I will leave. The return of the Walton.
5-day beard going.
So as we discussed, Travis Walton's disappearance was treated as a missing persons case eventually. And Arizona sheriff searched for Travis with scent dogs and helicopters throughout the national forest for 5 days. The most extensive search in Arizona history came to an end when Travis Walton was returned just miles away from where he had been taken.
The most extensive search in Arizona history? Come on.
Just after midnight.
Quick, some roughnecks missing. We need him.
Right? Yep. No.
I used to have a policy where they just look around. Like, is it 50 feet away? Doesn't seem to be.
They said a helicopter flying by was theirs and assured everyone they were searching for 5 days.
Okay.
As we're gonna, as I will reveal when we get to the Prestige, they, to quote what's his name in Indiana Jones, they were digging in the wrong place. They are searching the wrong place. He is not
Gimli.
where they're looking. Yeah. To quote Gimli. Yeah. They're digging in the wrong place.
After midnight on Monday, November 10th, 1975, Travis was left lying face down by the side of the road. He says he awoke to see a metallic mirror-like craft departing above him. Travis got to his feet and ran as quickly as he could to find help. Eventually, he found a payphone. He found a phone booth at a local gas station in Heber, Arizona, by which he contacted his family. Met with shock and disbelief, Travis was notified that he had been missing for 5 days. Travis was then immediately taken to a hospital that found him dehydrated and noticed a puncture wound on his right arm. He had also lost 12 pounds and had grown 5 days worth of facial hair.
Space beard.
I can do that.
Yeah, but can you do it in space?
We'll see. Five of the six witnesses.
It comes out really weird.
It goes out the wrong. Yeah, no gravity.
It all goes up.
Yeah, exactly.
5 of the 6 witnesses passed polygraph tests, like we discussed. One of the witnesses, Alan Dallas, walked out of the room before his test was completed. He and Travis had gotten into a fight.
He potentially had tried to kill him with a tree.
He felt agitated that the police were trying to pin the crime on him. Travis also passed the polygraph test, and medical records indicated no drugs were in his system. Travis returned with faint memories of being examined by alien creatures and accidentally viewing a star system from the craft's cockpit. He believes
I have a quote about that drugs in the system thing. He actually said there's no drugs in the system yet.
Which actually,
and then we talked about how he believes that the beam killed him. That's what he believes, and the aliens brought him back to revive him. And other than the press and the future of it, of him being on television, he's interviewed with Leonard Nimoy on the set of The Unexplained. And here are drawings. Travis expressed he had never met with this person, this Bill Spaulding, nor had spoken to any witnesses. The incident was investigated by the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, and this is some of the spaceship drawings. I will share that now for the YouTubes.
The tubes.
Ooh,
it's a nice one. What is that?
But that is kind of just like, as we've also mentioned, just kind of
it's been
the zeitgeist UFO.
I like the blue flash, the little zigzag lightning bolts.
That's
I was wondering if
the graphic up here.
If it's reminiscent of both lightning and a beam. It's like, well, does it zigzag or not? But that's kind of a nice combo between the two. Yeah.
And then he writes a book, goes on to be a speaker at UFO conferences, and lives a life with a mustache. Very well maintained. It never changes.
He looks like a
He's got a look.
character, and I love it.
Yeah, he accepted that look at 22 and was like, "This is what I look like."
Travis Walton, always taken up by Spaceman.
For the rights to his story for the movie Fire in the Sky, he received $100,000.
Good for him.
Right.
Good for him. He deserves something after being on that spaceship.
He was never on a spaceship.
Okay, so where was he?
Wait. He was briefly on the thing they saw, but it was not a UFO. And what's going on here is, so I already outlined that they had the financial interest in dissolving the contract. That's what the complete focus of my research was for a while, until about like an hour ago, when I found a whole new shit came to light, man. So this last year has been really busy in the Travis Walton space.
Travis Waltosphere.
Yeah, exactly. In the Waltosphere. The first was that Mike Rogers, the foreman of the crew lead, in April of 2021, in an interview, he admitted it was a hoax. What? He's like, yes. He says, no, we had discussed many times, Travis had talked about for years, wanting to do a UFO hoax and talking about how into aliens he was. But he kind of goes back and forth in the story. He's like, well, he's like, I wasn't in on it, but I'm convinced it was a hoax. But then later, he this says things like, oh, actually, I do know that it was a hoax. Then after that was published, he then tried to come back and recant it. And he's like, oh, no, you edited the audio. He said, they edited the audio to make me say that. The person who recorded it then says, well, then you were accusing me of a crime. And I guess we need to take this to court, right? In which case Mike Rogers is like, oh, never mind. No, you didn't edit it. So, okay, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So that's part of that. Okay. Then in July of 2021, this is the big thing. This website, called where's my web browser? Sorry.
Liarwalton.org.
No. It is. It's called the $3kit.weebly.com. And it is run by a guy named Charlie Weiser, and he looks at certain paranormal cases, UFO stuff, and goes through debunking them. He has compiled shit tons of evidence, including diagrams, pictures, interviews with people who were there at the time, compiled all this and makes out a very compelling case. So this is the prestige. This is
And
what's really
also,
happening.
if you can, share these sources. This sounds like an interesting, fun read for the Pingos as well.
Yeah. So it's $3kit.weebly.com. And
Which is a real website, despite this
yes.
fun name.
Yeah, they're in Australia. They're Australian too, which is kind of
there it is.
so.
Weebly.
Yep.
I used to use Weebly for my website. That's like it hosts websites. Yeah.
Okay. So this is called the Gantry Tower theory, and it is that. Remember how I said that some of those guys who are being pranked are not from the area. They're not familiar with it.
Mhm.
Well, about 6 miles away from where they were working is this thing called the Gantry Tower, which is a fire lookout tower. It was originally built in the 1920s and then rebuilt in the 1960s. And when they were leaving work that night, that day was not normal. Mike Rogers kept the crew after sundown. They worked for another 2 hours. That was not the time they normally would be leaving work. So it's dark already. When they are driving back towards the road that would take them to town, according to is it Jason Pierce, who was the youngest one in the car, and one of the other guys. Trying to remember
Yeah, he's I believe he's the one that ends up saying like, "Oh, is that just the sun going down?"
Yeah. So
and they note that it went down 30 minutes ago.
Yeah. So according to his recollection, though, they did not take the regular turn that would take them down to town. Instead, they continued driving on what's called Rim Road. They should have turned onto Black Canyon Road. Instead, they continued on Rim Road. He estimated for another 10 to 15 minutes or so. Then they see the light. And that's when the event happens. What happens to be down Rim Road in that direction is this Gantry Fire Lookout Tower. And let me see if I can find the quotes about when they're describing the craft. One of them described it as looking like two cake pans inverted on top, one on top of the other, with lit up glass panels in between. That's the description that is given. Then if you look at those drawings that you had of the craft, you can kind of see like it is like panels, right? The Gantry Fire Tower has it has these big shutters that are angled that go out down at angles, and you can adjust the angle. If you adjust the angle and open it just the right thing, it looks very much like that if it was lit up on the inside against a black sky and you cannot see anything else around it.
And if it's above them and they're looking up at it, you wouldn't need to have the top portion of the panels either.
Yeah.
Just the bottom would be visible. Yeah.
Now, he gets out, he runs over. According to this theory, he has an accomplice in the fire tower, which has a spotlight on it for safety reasons. They light him up with the spotlight. He falls down. Mike, who's in the truck and is in on the hoax, drives off in a panic. They go down the road. They get out. They're like, what just happened? We got to go back for Travis. I can't believe we left him. According to Jason, they drove longer on the way back than they were driving away. They did not go back to the same location. He's convinced of this. Travis he even told Travis later, he's like, I don't think we looked for you where you disappeared from. And Travis said to him, you're only 17. You got confused. You don't know what was really going on. Now,
this 22-year-old says.
Now, when the search manhunt was going on, they interviewed Travis's family. His mom apparently didn't seem too worried about his disappearance. His brother said, he knows where he is. And don't worry, they always bring them back. So he's like already on board with this UFO thing. Oh yeah, they'll bring him back. It's what UFOs do. So where he was the whole time is in this fire lookout tower, which is not where they bring the investigators back to. They give a false location. So the search is being conducted in a different area. He lays low in the tower for a little bit and then makes his way out, where he is then taken to a hotel in another town and hangs out for a few days before getting dropped off at this payphone to say, hey, I'm back. Another layer of the financial interest beyond just breaking this contract. The National Enquirer, they submit their story to the National Enquirer and win a prize of $2,500 for best UFO story. The Enquirer also performs a polygraph test, which he fails. But they still pay him $2,500, which is a nice chunk of change in 1975 for a 22-year-old. So there is this ongoing financial interest in keeping this story going. The $100,000 from the movie, paid speaking engagements. When he went on Joe Rogan this last year, he talked about how there's interest in remaking Fire in the Sky. Well, yeah, there's interest because he's trying to drum it up because he wants to get more money.
I've heard a lot of people say that there's interest in that.
Hey, I'm interested in that.
Also, the Gantry Tower, 1 star on Google reviews.
Oh yeah, because you can see, because most of the
went there, got surgery done on me by humanoid aliens.
Well, it's because most
do not recommend.
Didn't care for it.
At one time, there was a huge network of U.S. forestry lookout towers. There still are, but most of them are automated now because you can just use cameras to do the work. Used to be a guy would hang out there all fucking 6 months at a time and keep a lookout. But now most of them you can actually rent them as like an Airbnb overnight from the Department of Forestry. So you can go actually right before.
Jesus Christ! Is there anything capitalism can't destroy?
Just before quarantine started, Garth and I and a few of our friends we'd already paid our reservation to go to a nearby fire lookout here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and we're going to stay. And then it got canceled because of COVID. So that's probably, it's probably a shitty, I can see 1 star. There's probably no Wi-Fi out there in the middle of fucking, what is it?
The number one complaint was you will get stuck. Bring an off-road vehicle.
There you go.
Out there, you got to make your own Wi-Fi with God.
But I think there is the curious case of Travis Walton with a bunch of facts and theories truly that I don't know, Jordan. I think I'm on the other side now.
Because
what I'm hearing is that the Gantry Fire Tower was taken over by aliens who invented an abduction laser.
Ultimately, I think that you have a lot of good points. I think it would take a lot of coincidence and planning that I don't think it's once again kind of having your cake and eating it too. Was it a coincidence or was it planning?
He had been saying for years. There's an interview
this Gantry Tower thing is very interesting to me. I'm looking at these pictures. I'm looking at the drawings. I could see how in a moment of terror you could these two things could be conflated, and I do think that it's kind of beyond the realm of the people who did know about it to once the police got involved and once all of this shit was like a 5-day missing persons case for them to, I mean, I guess I could see it. You want to keep with it, or else,
have to.
or else we're both, or else we're all.
You're kind of committed at that point.
You've already filed the false police report. Also, not to do more attack on our Travis Walton. But 4 years previously, he served time for financial fraud, forging checks, and bank fraud. So,
sounds like a badass
little
dude.
check here and there,
So,
it doesn't mean I'm planning. Doesn't mean I'm planning an abduction. I just, I need a pizza.
As far as I've presented evidence that has a paper trail, there is an existing contract. You have all, there's actual physical stuff that you can look at, documents that back all this up. On his end, there is nothing physical, nothing at all, other than his story and the witness's story. That's it. So if you're weighing out and a puncture, but also one of the descriptions, didn't it say that he got thrown back 10 feet?
Well, several feet.
You would think that.
So there'd be bruises. There should be bruises.
Well,
but if the aliens are curing the bruises, why didn't they cure the puncture in his arm? And when they went back to search the area, nothing on the ground was disturbed. A force that's going to launch a guy several feet through the air. I think one of the accounts also said flame and possibly like they said it was akin to a grenade explosion. There's dry pine needles all over the fucking ground. There's no singe marks.
Akin to a lightning strike or blue fire, I think.
That would leave
one of the Pingo in the bunker with us throws out the possibility. What if the aliens were in on the prank?
They were like,
double prank.
They were like,
aliens
let's
were
get this
pranking some guy
17-year-old.
who was trying to prank.
Let's get this twerp. I will say that the Gantry Tower images have given me a lot to think about. You have not
Because over
convinced
time-
me,
well, over
but
time,
you've
his
given me
story-
a lot to think about.
Well, Travis changes the description of the craft as the years go on. It starts off as something being only it's like 10 to 20 feet. And by the end, he says it's a 40-foot saucer-shaped craft. But that's
The
not
sketches said 15 feet.
yeah,
by
and that's
diameter.
not what the eyewitnesses describe either. So
But in
again,
that
these
heat of the
stories change.
moment, I'm saying things are larger. Like, I don't believe Jordan saw a 7-foot rattlesnake. I think it was
It's
maybe
true.
3 feet, and
it
he
was
got
as round a
excited about
man
it.
as a
There,
around as thick around as a man's thigh.
there
You'd
have
shit
been,
your skeleton out, you would.
Well, this Gantry Tower lookout thing is a box about 15 foot square up in the air,
Mhm.
so that
It-
fit matches.
yes.
But there have been studies done on trying to assess the size of an object that is.
I was
in the
about to
sky.
bring that up. If there's not a lot of objects nearby to compare it to, it's very difficult to estimate size. It could have
It's
been a
why-
little further away and a lot bigger and look the same in your field of view.
Sure.
So
And it's also nighttime. It's the only source of light, or it's the brightest source of light they're seeing, so it can distort that. It's also similar to like why the moon looks so much fucking bigger when it's low in the sky versus high, is because you have comparison points between you and it that give it that sense of scale. Then yeah, the once up it's high, you can't tell. This comes up a lot in like when cryptid research, when people talk about Thunderbird sightings. It's like, yeah, but you can't accurately gauge how big or how far away that object really is in a blue background.
Listen, we'll get there soon enough when the
Okay.
corporations give us cyborg eyes that measure distance and size
Yeah.
for us.
yes.
But I
Eventually
think
there
we've
might actually
given-
yeah.
I think
Go
we've
ahead.
given everyone a lot to think about on this case. Kind of like why not me anymore, but Jordan still holds firm in his belief.
I hold firm.
And
Look,
check out everything
I
we've been talking
also
about too, because
tend
it's
to
an interesting
believe-
case
Oh,
and has lots of
hold on, wait.
points.
Nate, you still believe?
Nate, you said you didn't believe earlier. Pick a side.
I'm going back and forth. I'm playing both sides.
Playing both sides.
Doing some spycraft.
But let's continue on after Nate.
I think that it's important to note that they have stuck to this story for what 47 years
Within various details, the overall main narrative has been the same.
Well, memory's a
Right.
tricky thing.
But if three of the people in the vehicle were not in on it, then they are accurately telling what they experienced and saw.
That's
So they're not
true.
lying.
They would stick to it.
One
Yeah.
of the two guys involved in it has said it's a hoax.
Well, he
Mike
said that he's
Rogers.
always believed it was a hoax.
Yeah.
It's an
And-
interesting case,
yeah.
and for sure, it's either a perfect tale of alien abduction or the greatest prank ever unfolded.
Sure.
And I am my hats off to them, sir.
And I'm,
Phenomenal prank.
closer to seeing how it could definitely be the type of thing where it's like a prank that got out of hand, and then
You gotta follow the money.
They surreptitiously. Well, but I mean that's like fucking Magneto level thinking of him to be like, I've got it. The contract will run out in so many.
it's-
You're telling me
this
that
is,
no group of guys between the ages of 17 and 25 have ever come up with a bunch of bullshit.
I'm not
or
saying that at
prank.
all. I'm just saying
The internet-
I'm just
the internet
saying
has
none of
taught
them
us
have
anything.
gotten away for it for almost 50 years.
And they were
So far-
looking for him. They were like looking for him, like 5-day manhunt, right? It was
Nowhere
the
near the
biggest-
tower.
It was
Nowhere
the
near the
biggest
tower.
hillbilly hunt in Arizona history.
I would like to
I'm-
see an actual documented source that proves that is the greatest manhunt that had ever
All
happened.
right,
in
Pingo
Arizona at that
Nation,
point.
you heard it. Give
I
us
want
the,
actual-
give us
I
the
want
receipts
actual-
on that.
I want actual law enforcement documentation.
documents.
Oh, and that's also so Travis is just remind me of another thing. One of Travis's best friend growing up is now an FBI agent, and Travis has confirmed, oh yeah, that was my best friend. And that guy said that Travis had always talked about wanting to prank their town with something big.
Yeah.
And he said
Listen,
possibly
the,
he even said that he was like, I could get a balloon and attach flares to it and we could make
the
everybody think it's
FBI
UFO.
murdered the Black Panthers, so I don't trust them so much. But I think that's a good
Okay.
point to just think about. And now let's go on with your guys'
I
do-
case of
I do
the
have kind of
Winchester
a-
House.
I have a fun button to the whole Travis Walton thing. This is a quote from him on his website.
Mhm.
If I had to do it over again, I wouldn't get out of the truck.
Also, technically true. So Yeah, why don't you guys tell us a little about the Winchester Mystery House?
Winchester Mystery. Are you guys familiar with this house at all?
I'm a little familiar. I've almost gone a couple of times. It's what is it? Grandmother Winchester was guided by the spirits of the people murdered by Winchester guns to make strange architectural choices that would befuddle and confuse her would-be spiritual.
And I believe that if
pursuers.
she ever stopped construction, she would die, or the ghost would get her, something like that.
It was a curse.
Yes.
The Winchester curse. She had a seance room, right?
She had a seance room and
she had
many
a seance
seances.
plot.
So,
Yeah.
So Cody has all the details on this, but for anyone unfamiliar with the Winchester Mystery House, it's in San Jose and it's a tourist spot. I've been a couple times.
we live nearby.
Yeah, we live just, I'm like half an hour away. We're just up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So it's a beautiful,
anytime
big
you can
Victorian
dream
house.
a stairway that doesn't have an end, you're in the Winchester House.
And they really do lean into the spookiness and look at these weird things. Look at the stained glass. That's just the right number of panes. And I've had the tour a couple times, and different tour guides will put their own little spin on it. So some lean into the haunted house aspect. Others talk more about it in regular terms. But in any case, it's a really beautiful house, regardless of whether or not you believe in the spooky nature of it. Yeah. So anyway.
So Sarah Lockwood Winchester, née Pardee, her maiden name was Pardee, born 1839, and she lived until 1922. I'm going to refer to her as Sarah because that's what everybody does now. But in her lifetime, she actually liked to be called Sally, which was her maternal grandmother's name.
By the way, sorry to cut you off, Cody. Yeah. I meant to mention it was in fact Helen Mirren who played Sarah Winchester.
Was it? Okay.
In the movie. It's the movie. It's called Winchester. It was released in 2018.
There you go.
So in 1862, she marries William Wirt Winchester, the only son of Oliver Winchester, who founded the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. And they have a daughter together in 1866, but their daughter, who's named Annie, only survives for 1 month childhood. They called it marasmus, which is like the child just doesn't keep weight on. There's nothing you can do to make them gain weight. And then they basically just die of malnutrition. So it's pretty traumatic for a mother. And then that's in 1866. Then in 1881, it's quite an emotional year for Sarah Winchester. Her husband dies. First her father-in-law dies, which then leaves a whole bunch of interest in the Winchester company to his son, her husband, who then also dies of tuberculosis. Her mom dies. This is all in 1881.
Wow, what a year.
Fuck.
When he dies, she inherits 50% holding in the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. And according to some sources, $20 million, which in 2021, because it was most recent, stats, $561.6 million, making her one of the richest women in the world at that time. And that was in 1881. She gets that money. Then 1884, her older sister dies. And according to legend, it's this point that she goes and sees a spiritualist. And he tells her that she needs to go and build a house continuously to avoid the curse that's been put on the Winchester family by all of the ghosts of those who've been killed by Winchester arms. Because, the Winchester, it's the gun that won the West. This is, of course, bullshit. There is no evidence that she ever met with a spiritualist.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was bullshit because it was the Remington the whole time.
It
was the Colt 45.
It was the Colt
friend.
Peacemaker.
It was in I got to get so many tabs and so many things.
That's our episodes as well. Just be like, oh, we have 70 tabs open.
Yeah. So there was in the 1960s, a book was written that tells this story. And in that, it gives an actual name for the spiritualist. And they say he was in Boston. And she lives in Connecticut, by the way. But they said the spiritualist, they give his name, I think it's like Coors or Coombs. and they give Boston. So now we have a fact that we could try to verify. We could look at records in Boston and see if anybody's going to seances held by this supposedly famous spiritualist. Because at this time, seances and spiritualism is widely popular. In fact, it is a social event for the wealthy to hold seances in their parlor and have people come. So anytime there's these seances in high society, it's a social event that is written about and reported on. There is no record of this man ever existing in Boston. So that's a story that doesn't even show up, or that attributed to that specific person isn't even referenced until 1968. So,
right, but also very possible that this person was going under a fake name,
stage name, could have been a friend of a friend.
Chiro,
Chiro.
Okay. Well, we do have record though that in the year of 1886, her doctor diagnosed her with severe rheumatoid arthritis and said to her, "You know what? You need to go to California. It's a better climate, and it'll be better for your aching bones." Now, Garth and I, we live in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but technically the closest town to us is a place called Los Gatos. And Los Gatos, at this time in the 1880s, in fact, my family has lived here in the same spot since 1880. So around the same, just a few more years before she came out. At that time, this area was being sold internationally as the healthiest climate in the world outside of the Dead Sea. If you had a health problem, come to the Santa Clara Valley. It'll do you right. So she comes out this way. She brings her 4 younger sisters with her, so she doesn't come out alone. And she finds a 45-acre ranch just next to San Jose in Santa Clara. Now, at this time, I also want to stress that this is all farmland.
This is now the Silicon Valley, and it's all one giant metropolis. The whole valley is just a giant.
Yeah,
it's a bunch of cities all rolled into each other. But back then, it was all orchards, all agriculture.
Think of like a smaller version of Los Angeles, where like you can't tell where one town ends and the other begins, and they're all crammed together and just collectively called San Jose. And at this time, there was something like, I think they said over 5 million fruit trees in the valley. It used to be called, before Silicon Valley, they called it the Valley of the Heart's Delight. It's all farmland. So she finds this 45-acre ranch with a 2-story, 8-room farmhouse. And she decides, this is where I am going to build my new forever home.
Sounds like a good place.
So she buys it and she names it, it is Lamonda. Hold on.
Quivermore.
Rivendell.
She also came to the area because she had been out here in 1870 with her husband, so she had fond memories of being here with him. She renamed the property Lanada Villa after a location in the Basque region that she had visited with her husband on their honeymoon, and she loved it. So she buys this property and then she begins to build. Now, Sarah Winchester, when her husband was still alive, she had already been an enthusiast for architecture. The two of them designed and built together a mansion in New Haven, Connecticut. So her passion was always architecture. But being a woman in the 1880s, that's not kind of the role that you are given until you get $20 million and nobody can tell you what the fuck you can or can't do.
Damn straight. Build it, bitch.
So she starts building. At its greatest extent, it had over 500 rooms. It featured a tower, a bell tower that was 7 stories tall. And I think it averaged about 4 to 3 stories. It kind of like moved around, but 500 rooms.
It looks like Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Like a mini version, just like turrets and yeah.
All right. I'm going next year.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Okay. So there are a whole bunch of myths and legends that begin when she's still alive and building there. Because think about this. It's empty farmland. But then in the middle of all these orchards is this giant fucking mansion that just keeps expanding day by day and getting bigger. People are going to start to talk, especially when there's like no other entertainment. So everybody in the area is spreading rumors about what the hell is going on in the Winchester mansion. And she kind of, as she got older, she kept to herself, but early on she didn't. She participated in a lot of local events and charities. Her niece, her 21-year-old niece, comes and lives with her in the mansion and handles all of her financial stuff and bookkeeping. And they kept meticulous notes, because when you have a construction project of this size and you're hiring lots of workers to work on it, you want to keep your receipts and your books straight. So we can verify, sources for the building material. what contractors were working on what part of the house. There was an ongoing mystery about where the glass for some of the windows came from. And there were people who actually did their dissertations on trying to track down the manufacturer. So like this, it's a house of
well documented house.
Well documented.
Wow.
Yeah. She also has a complete staff of all the contractors she keeps on retainer. So they're working on this. The myth is that she worked, they constructed day and night around the clock, 24/7 for 38 years. Bullshit. There are a matter of record that there were months at a time when there was no construction happening at all, most notably in the winter. It is a nice climate around here. We don't get too cold in the winter, but we do get a lot of rain, and it's very wet here in the winter in the Greater Bay Area, or at least it used to be.
I was about to say, yeah, maybe not in recent years, but
in the
traditionally
in the 1880s, the early 1900s, a lot of rain. So you can't do any construction in the winter. So it didn't make sense. So that would cease. But she also had it's also still a working ranch. It's 45 acres. So she has ranch hands, there's gardeners, there's groundskeepers, all who are in her employ, people who, after her death, gave interviews and said, you know what? She was not a superstitious woman. She never mentioned ghosts in the time that I was there. There never were any seances that we were aware of. The room that is reported to be the seance room that they'll take you into on the tour, it's a blue room. They call it the blue room. And supposedly there's only one way in and one way out, which don't most rooms only have one way in and one way out? But anyway.
Unless it's a Jack and Jill situation.
According to her own records and diaries, that was the gardener's bedroom. It was not a seance room. And again, if it's a seance, she's going to be having people over. It's a social event, right? I will take a break to scan my notes and also give you guys
that is fair.
I mean,
go on.
It still sounds like a crazy undertaking at the very least. That must have been fueled by some kind of.
It's fueled by,
if not a desire to, contact spirits or whatever, just insanity.
So yeah, some of it seems like it would be different if it was like a woman who was just constantly building a new room here, a new room there, but some of it is like topsy-turvy nonsense, stairways.
It makes sense. It will make sense. It wasn't always topsy-turvy nonsense. Remember I said the building used to have at its greatest extent 500 rooms. It doesn't anymore. It now only has, I think, 150 or 200.
160.
Okay. Why? Where did all these rooms go? The 1906 earthquake, which is measured at an estimated, the Richter scale didn't exist then, but estimated to be about a 7.9, at which point geologists say a 250-mile long fault, like fissure, happened in the San Andreas Fault off the coast of California. It's the largest single casualty event in California history. 3,000 people died. 80% of the city of San Francisco was destroyed completely. The area that Garth and I live in now has a lot of redwood trees. Back then, it didn't, because they clear cut these mountains to rebuild San Francisco. So when this happened, most of the building collapsed. She, at this point, wasn't even living in the house anymore. The tour guides will tell you that she got trapped in a room for 3 days until workers could dig her out. Did not happen. She was living in another town at the time because she also owned property all over the Bay Area. The city of Atherton, which to this day is one of the wealthiest places in the country. It's right next to Stanford University. She owned several houses there. She used to own half of what would become the town of Burlingame, which is where YouTube is based out of. And
YouTube.
So and there's a few other places. Oh, then and then she ended up living on a houseboat that she called an Ark out in the bay. So she was by 1906, she wasn't even living in the house. And so she said, you know what? Don't rebuild, just remove what's been damaged, seal everything else off, and then just keep the rest from falling down.
You remember that staircase that goes up to the floor that's not there anymore? Just put a ceiling on. The staircase can go up. The staircase can go up to the ceiling. It's fine.
I mean, 500 rooms though. It lost what? 200 rooms to this earthquake.
And this is before buildings were built for earthquake standards, specifically in California.
Yes. And again, this is the largest earthquake in recorded history in California. Like I said, 80% of the city of San Francisco was destroyed.
Good Lord.
So a whole bunch of this house is gone. So again, just okay, yeah, there's a door that opens out to nowhere. Well, there used to be a landing there. There isn't now. She did so little work after this point that by 1910, after 1910, there's no more construction that happens there at all. Between 1906 and 1910 itself, she just has them clean up the damage, seal off the stuff that's now, goes to nowhere. And I think they add an elevator. Nice. Tour guides will point out how weird it is that the steps have all the staircases have really shallow steps. In one case, there's 44 steps to go a 10-foot rise.
Oh yeah, old lady needs to go little steps.
Exactly. Yep. Near crippling rheumatoid arthritis.
Well, and she was quite short. She was like 5 feet tall.
Yeah,
well, she wasn't probably as short for the time, but
I was gonna say, isn't the average height is like 5'5" back then?
She might have been a little shorter than 5. I remember when I went as a kid, the tour guide used me as an example for the height of Lady Winchester. He was like, "Yeah, about the size of this kid right here," and so I kept standing next to different things during the tour.
Sure.
Now, there's a legend that on two separate occasions she turned U.S. presidents away from the Mystery House. One of them was William McKinley, I think in 1902.
Well,
and
who would go on to what? Get shot.
So
by a Winchester rifle.
According to legend, she denied him entry there. According to records, he was in the area and there was an event that was planned, and they had contacted her to ask if she wanted to donate money to this event, and she just declined. So that's okay. That's So it's not the same as saying she didn't allow him to come to the house. It's just saying that she didn't want to participate in a fundraiser. The second story is that his successor, Teddy Roosevelt, who was his vice president that ascended after he was assassinated, came to the house in 1903, and she told him, "Get the fuck off my lawn," and wouldn't open the gate. In reality, not only was she not living there that year, in the year of 1903, she was living in her house in South San Francisco, assisting her niece with her upcoming wedding. She paid for the whole wedding and bought them a house. And so it was like, I'm going to spend a whole year planning your dream wedding. So she wasn't even at the house. Furthermore, Teddy Roosevelt had gone on record many times saying that he would never participate in something that could be construed as him endorsing a product. If he went to the home of a woman who owned 50% of the Winchester Arms Company, that could be construed by his opponents, the detractors, as him endorsing this product. So he never even would have shown up.
Endorsing Winchester brand crazy houses.
Yes.
Yeah, which they were trying to sell.
It was a really hot commodity at the time.
So the finest crazy house in America is made by Winchester.
So now we'll jump ahead
from Sears and Roebuck.
It's a kit home. You see,
it's a kit home. You can get on a train. The Winchester kit home.
Now we jumped ahead to 1922. She dies not at the house. She's already pretty much abandoned the place for the last 12 years by this point. When she dies, in fact,
how did it happen?
Oh, ghosts.
Yeah. Went out. I always like to think she went out for one last big wave.
She was,
and they never saw her again.
Oh, Bodie, man. Well, she was 83 years old.
Okay.
And so, natural causes.
Last big wave.
As my grandpa would say, failed the alarm clock test.
Good one.
When she died, though, the property's sitting there. A group of investors collectively buy it and assess it. And they say, you know what? This house is in such a state of disrepair, it is worthless. We could salvage it and tear it apart and get the lumber out of it. But then these two people show up who say, hey, to these investors who now owned it, said, would you lease us this property so that we can make it into a tourist attraction? And this is... they are John and Mame Brown, carnival owners and theme park promoters. So these are people who run carnivals. They're carnies. And they say,
they're good American folk.
Yeah.
Well, but the point is that they know entertainment and they know a good story and what sells tickets.
Sure.
And so they start leasing it and start doing renovations. During this renovation period, they add things that number up to 13. So those panels, those window panes that have 13 panels, they didn't exist prior to that. Again, we have records of what was installed and what was built on this house. Those were added after the Browns took over. They'll tell you, one room they point out, look, there's 13 coat hangers because, again, she was superstitious, and the number 13. Again, They added those. They swapped out all the drain covers in the sinks for drains that have 13 holes. They did everything in their ability to fit this narrative. The idea that she, then in 1924, they had Harry Houdini visit and they told him their whole thing. You know, Harry Houdini he was a believer in the supernatural, but also a skeptic, right?
He was a debunker because he did believe, but he was all about busting charlatans. That was a big thing.
Yeah. So they told him a bunch of superstitious beliefs about her seances and stuff. And again, he's just going off of their story. And whether or not he said he experienced anything there, I don't have a record, but it was enough to say Harry Houdini has been here on the tour, right? That's drawing people in.
This is what Teddy Roosevelt was avoiding.
Right. They said that she was she had a guilty conscience over the gun deaths, and that's part of why she felt she was cursed. At no point in any of her writings or interactions with anybody did she ever express any form of shame or remorse over what the company had done. Quite the contrary.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anything.
She would talk about what a success story this business was. Why is she keep building? Now, the idea that she is confusing the ghosts by creating a labyrinth, this is a very old belief that Garth and I recently did an episode about crossroads and all the myths that evolve the crossroads. Right. There's an old folk belief that ghosts are surprisingly easy to confuse. And so if you go to a place like a crossroads, they get confused and turned around.
They don't understand all the stuff that's happened since they died.
So the idea is that she could
plus left and right's different for them.
It's like a mirror.
Yeah, they're in another dimension, so they're all just offset from reality, and they can't tell right from left or north and south.
In 1951, a student at San Jose State College, which is just down the road from the Winchester Mystery House, Bruce Spoon, he did his dissertation his master's thesis was on the Winchester House and its construction. It was for architecture. At this time, he was able to talk to actual workers who worked on the building. They were still alive. He talked to a guy who grew up on the property and worked for his family, worked for her for decades. And at no point in any of this, they said, this ideas of her building this to confuse ghosts or that she was superstitious is bullshit. And in reality, the reason she was building it is she was an enthusiast for architecture and design. She had endless disposable income. She had people who she had now built a rapport with who worked for her, and she wanted to keep them employed because now they are extensions of her family, to the point that when she died, she named every one of her former employees in her will and left them something.
That's cool.
Well, now the tour guides will tell you that the tour guides will tell you that she was suspicious of her workers and she had secret passageways so she could spy on them all the time because she didn't trust them. If somebody didn't trust their employees, why would they take so much care of them and keep them employed? If you didn't trust somebody, you'd fucking fire them. Instead, you keep them on your employ for 20 plus years.
Especially in the time before workers' rights really had a strong moment in this country.
Yeah.
Well, maybe she just liked having people around. And that's why she kept building.
So, and keeping people around who are keeping her secrets about the house that they're building part of.
Her ghost secret.
It's either keep them employed or bury them in the basement so they don't tell anybody.
The idea is that they need to be paid off. That you think that after the money that she left their brain out, then they would have reason to tell all of her secrets. But instead, they all stick to the story, and many of them were actually really upset with the Browns for besmirching the name of this friend of theirs. Like, you're making her sound like she was this crazy person, and she wasn't. She was a real human being who had interests and a life of her own. And they've now turned her into a prop for this story where she is a crazy woman who is being, haunted by this past that really a curse and all this stuff. And it's like you're dehumanizing an actual person for your own entertainment value.
Remember, she's just a war profiteer.
Exactly.
An honest war profiteer.
But also,
in a way, isn't she also H.H. Holmes?
Right. But the idea that, again, why would she keep doing this? It's like, look at she's one of the richest women in the world. Look at the rich fuckers we have around us today and the crazy shit they do with endless supplies of money. You get bored, you buy mansions, you build things, you decide, hey, I'm going to build a tunnel boring company because fuck it, I got money.
And there's a super yacht that
Yeah.
Bezos is trying to get out of Netherlands or something.
Oh boy,
She actually
has it under the bridge.
Could you imagine?
She retired to a super yacht called an Ark out in the ocean. So,
I wish that was still floating around out there, like haunted. Like the Winchester mystery boat.
Yeah, take it on like cruises.
The sequel,
incredible. Well,
and I think you kind of won me over on that. I don't really think it's a curse so much, but the workers who work there currently on the ghost tours, once again, as you said, follow the money. There's reason for them to report these things. And if they say there's a bunch of weird stuff happening.
Well, yeah. Okay. So we'll address some of those weird things. Noises and cold spots. We'll start with those. Cold spots. This building is fucking crazy. You have hallways that branch in weird ways. There's not going to be equal heating, and you're going to have weird convection currents that move through this building. Myself last night, walking down my hallway, noticed that my towel rack in the hallway was suddenly swinging. And I'm like, I'm the only one in the house. What the hell is happening? I approach it and realize that, there's an air current that is coming from the partially opened door to my bedroom where I have a fan in the window.
So, and for sure,
but
that
those
makes sense on the cold spots.
Are called ghosts, Cody.
Also, the weird sounds could explain what some tour guides supposedly hear as a weird screaming throughout some of the halls.
The organ
old buildings, they settle and move. This is an old wooden structure. There's going to be creaks and moans. And any experience that they have that is based on these false premises, they're reinforcing a false narrative. The Winchester Mystery House is a house of cards built from a pack of lies, is what I'm telling you.
But I think the ones that really get me, and I think the most of us, are when the workers are in a room by themselves and they feel that weird touch on their back. There's been many reports of like actually feeling like a palm pressed against your back in some rooms.
You are working in a place that is purported to be the most haunted location in the world. Psychics have claimed that there's thousands of ghosts who occupy this building with you. You are now in a room by yourself in this weird structure.
Maximum 13.
Yeah, 13 Ghost Tops. I saw that movie and the remake with Matthew Lillard. Remember that one? Oh, yeah. Tony Shalhoub was in that.
Shalhoub, fantastic.
It's a jungle out there.
You have the weird currents of air, and
I'm glad that's the one that got you.
Are you guys are familiar with infrasound, right?
Sure.
Slightly, yes. As much as most normal people are, I think.
Okay.
I'm not. Explain, please. What's infrasound?
Garth, we've discussed this in multiple episodes, man.
Right. Well, I just need it drummed into me a few more times.
Yeah, drum it into the listeners as well.
Drum it. Infrasound,
so we can't hear it.
Infrasound is a sound vibration that is happening at a frequency that we cannot hear, but it is detectable with equipment. It is there. You pick up on it subconsciously. They have shown that it actually can vibrate the liquid within your eyeballs too. And in doing psychological experiments where they have exposed people to infrasound in controlled environments, anxiety raises, they feel like they are being watched, and they can experience what they say is a presence in the room with them because it is activating your flight or fight response in your brain. The human brain is something that is easily trickable and hackable. We've talked about this in some of our past episodes about how Garth and I no longer trust our memories because every time you remember something, you're remembering the last time you remembered it. And so over time, your memory is susceptible to degradation and introduction of new effects. Exactly.
Sure.
Kind of like the 5 guys who were hanging out with Travis Walton.
Right. So in this case, what I'm saying is these people who are working there are already primed in their mind that there are ghosts there. They are in a disorienting building, all alone. You start to think, well, what if those stories are true? Then you are experiencing subconsciously the infrasound in this weird building with all these weird angles and air currents and all that stuff. You could easily delude yourself into thinking somebody is in there with you or that you have been touched.
You could certainly could.
And my last thing about it, and then Jordan can go. That was Helen Mirren as Sarah Winchester.
Yeah, no, we already got to the bottom.
It was brought up, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't listening for that moment. I was thinking other stuff.
Helen Mirren
You disappeared for
Co-star
like
of
30 seconds,
Caligula.
and that's right when I said it.
Oh yeah, my bad. I had
No
to
worries,
shut
man.
a window.
Roger had to
worries.
go into another room for another armload of.
I waited
Helen
for you to
Mirren
leave, and then I could
research.
say Helen Mirren.
Personally, this one, not much of a leap. I don't put a lot of stock into the Mystery House. I think it's a very interesting place that was built in an interesting style for the time. There's cool history around it.
Sound like she was trying to build the first McMansion.
Yes.
And so
The first of many around here.
And I've also built a legend of a witch in my childhood with the other elementary school kids. Because when you see a creepy house and you don't actually go around it, you build your own stories of what it is.
The creepiest of creepies. Yeah. And it has this, I don't know if they changed the paint, but it has this kind of deep purple situation going on that's always kind of creepy. It looks like a weird witch's house.
It's kind of like it's like that Tom Waits song, What Is He Building in There? You know?
Yeah, sure.
People in the community are just watching this house grow, and this monster is just getting bigger in size. Like, what the fuck is she building in there, and why?
It sounds like something mildly interesting happened there a long time ago, and the stories thereof have been grandly disproportioned.
But I also don't want to make you guys think that I don't like the Winchester Mystery House.
Hey, I like the Winchester Mystery House. And as we all know, the world is thick with spirits. They're just not there. It is not.
It just happens to be the least haunted house. So there's other ones out there.
Yeah, I don't know where they got that most haunted house in the world. I don't know where they got that.
It's like what happens in Yorkshire specifically, or York.
But that's real.
Or like at the Whaley House.
Every bar, every building in York, England, is the most haunted pub in the world.
Yeah, because each of them has been there for 700 years,
and that's fair. They've been there for 1,000 years. Some of those pubs are like 12,000 years old, or 1,200 years old.
But
sword.
Their bricks are made of plague victims. It's a whole thing.
I would still go and pay a ticket and take the tour again, because at the very least, I mean, it is also like, I am fascinated by the fact that this is a time capsule of like architecture with like there's stained glass windows that weren't put there by the Carneys, that were put there by Sarah Winchester, that are just incredible works of art. There's like this one room, a ballroom where it's entirely wood, like, and it's all like wood paneling, and I think it's all put together with like joints, and there's no nails, and so it's acoustically really cool,
like the Integratron.
The Integratron.
So. And Garth and I we live a crow's throw away from the mystery spot. And I've been trying to get them to let us come there too, because even though I don't think it is anything supernatural, to go, if you guys aren't familiar with the mystery spot, there's multiple mystery spots. There was a time in the 30s and the 40s when they were building them as the highway system was expanding. They built them all over America, and almost all of them have the same floor plan and all have the same reported story that it was a shack that tumbled down the hill.
They franchised them? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so there's two
you
alone.
can franchise anything in capitalism.
There's two alone in California, and one of them was the inspiration for the Mystery Shack from the show Gravity Falls. But
Love the mystery spot.
But to go to the mystery spot, like it's all optical illusions, but it's fun. It's really fucking trippy. It's crazy, and you have a good time. So I'm not against having a good time and paying for entertainment value. In the same way that like I could go to a Marvel movie and suspend my disbelief, like, oh yeah, these guys have superpowers, versus the other person in the theater who was convinced that this is a documentary happening in real time and they really have these powers.
Yeah.
So
except Ant-Man, right?
Ant-Man's real.
No, that's the one that's real. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Hell yeah, fellas. Well, thank you so much for dropping by today. I think that's going to do it for another episode of Werewolf Radar. Where can the people find you guys on the internet?
You can find us on Twitter at Least Haunted. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/leasthaunted, leasthaunted.com, and almost every podcast app. I think you can find us on there. We also we have what we like to call the least haunted mailbox in the world.
All right.
P.O. Box 22, Redwood Estates, California. We've been trying to encourage people to send us if you have something that you think is haunted or cursed, we'll take it on. Send it to us. We'll do an unboxing or something.
All right, Natalia, you heard him. Instead of sending me your cursed objects, send these guys some cursed objects.
We'd love some.
We recently got into the haunted doll business. we teamed up with Justin McElroy from the podcast My Brother and Me, and we created a haunted doll that we listed on eBay for charity. It went for $140, and it was a doll that was the receptacle of the nighttime soul. It's not haunted all day.
Yeah, we worked it out on the podcast what the backstory of the doll.
Yeah, it's a septuagenarian hang gliding instructor from Las Cruces, New Mexico. When she sleeps, her soul travels into this doll.
Oh, okay.
And so somebody bought it.
And then she wakes up in the daytime and is like, well, back to being about skydiving.
Yep.
Interesting. Very cool. Very cool.
Well, as the owner of that doll, I can tell you she is not happy.
You got Miss Charlotte? You got her?
You can check us out on Twitter and Instagram and twitch.tv/werewolf_radar, where we play TTRPGs every Monday, video games the rest of the week. If you
I'm
really
trying
like
to get through Cry of Fear. I'm trying.
Ooh.
All right. It's very scary. I don't play horror games, and it's
very dark.
Too much.
If you really enjoy what we do, you can go to patreon.com/werewolfradar, and you can sign up to be a Dark Council member and get some sweet merch, some additional content. You can come and hang with us in the
Every
Zoom room
Sunday.
while we record, like Adric and Janet Bravo are doing right now. Shout out.
Also, Janet threw out there as well. I believe it was meant to be a hoax, but the aliens decided to get involved and just fuck with these guys. A prank on the prank.
Okay. Double prank. Double O prank. All right. Until next time, folks, thank you for listening. And Cody and Garth, if you will join us with our sign-off line on the count of three, we're going to say "Punch the Sky, Spaceman Joe."
Okay.
Okay. So on the count of three, 1, 2, 3, punch the sky, Spaceman Joe. That was maybe the best
That might have been the best one we've ever done.
It's because we did a good episode.